Hi everyone, welcome back to the episode of Ask Dr. Nick. My name is Dr. Nick Schmidlkoffer and I work for the Neurologic Wellness Institute. And today's question is, can physical exercise reduce chronic neuroinflammation? And the answer is yes. There have been many studies that look at how physical exercise, whether that be running, strength training, cardio, doing treadmill running, outside running, doing swimming, any type of physical exercise can reduce neuroinflammation. And when we get into the paper, we'll talk about the paper is a meta-analysis on the entire, systemic review on the entire topic of how physical exercise can decrease inflammation by affecting microglial activation. And so we'll talk a little bit about microglia and these specific cells that are in the brain that are there to kind of survey and monitor the area, and they need to be in a specific state to have good homeostasis, good or eustasis, if we want to say that, area and metabolic processing in the brain. And so let's get right to the paper. This paper is out of Cells. It is physical exercise inhibits inflammation and microglial activation. It is from July 2019, and like I said, it's a review. And so if we look here at the abstract, it just basically talks about how besides improving neuroplasticity by altering synaptic function in various brain regions, exercise also modulates multiple systems that are known to regulate neuroinflammation and glial activation. So activated microglia, I'll show you a picture here in a sec, activated microglia and several pro-inflammatory cytokines play active roles in pathogenesis of neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So what is a microglial cell? Well, this up here on the top left and right are microglial cells. Okay, they are the same cell, but they can get activated differently based on different cytokines or different signals from the immune system. And so you have a microglia that can have an M1 classical activation and M2 alternative activation. Basically, what these do is that the microglia in a normal state are kind of surveying the area. They're pruning synaptic cells to basically improve neuroplasticity. They, besides pruning synapses, they're also pruning different dendrites and areas to basically help make the connections between brain cells more efficient. They are also cleaning out debris, cleaning out waste, and they do that very well. The problem is when we have a traumatic brain injury, a concussion, when we have multiple concussions, when we have chronic inflammation, whether that be from poor diet or infections or other sources of inflammation, then we can have these worse activations or these worse outcomes from microglia. And they can be activated in a way that produces and promotes more inflammation because they're trying to clear out whatever it may be, dead debris from infections, like dead cells, or maybe even dead neurons and other glia, waste products from those things. And so these two activations need to be properly controlled to completely resolve inflammation and help with tissue repair. And so we know the M2 alternative activation is more for that dendritic modification, phagocytic pathways, neurotrophic factors to help with learning and memory, while the M1 is more of the higher pro-inflammatory response that is going to be for infections and things that are very chronically ongoing in our brain. So back to the paper, we have basically the review says that there are possible mechanisms involved in exercise modulated microglial activation, and it highlights all of the impacts both in animal models and in humans, showing that microglial activation is regulated by exercise. So the problem with this study is it does not have any figures or graphics, but we can go right to the table and talks about how exercise can regulate microglial activation by increasing anti-inflammatory factors. So basically with cytokines, membrane proteins, metabolism, neurotrophic factors, heat shock proteins, antioxidants. Basically they used rat and mouse models mostly, but they do have a few human studies here in all these showing how like running a marathon can increase IL-6, IL-10, which can help with anti-inflammatory markers. Just physical exercise can improve membrane proteins and therefore help to regulate CSF, or the cerebrospinal fluid volume. SIRT1, which is a longevity gene in skeletal muscle. And by improving metabolism, we can therefore improve or basically decrease activation of microglial cells. This was by sprinting. Cycling, aerobic treadmill, cycling. More treadmill here affecting heat shock proteins, improving BDNF, so brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is for increasing plasticity in the brain. So yes, so there are plenty of things. Yes, there's a lot of them are on rats, mice, dogs here, but there are human studies that show that it can be beneficial to exercise because it helps to decrease activation of the microglia and help to decrease inflammation overall. So then they talk about the different. One thing I wanted to mention here is just the lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system is the way that we can remove waste from our brain. And so in multiple models, no human studies, but multiple models, basically exercise on a treadmill enhanced efficiency of the lymphatic system in aging and Alzheimer's disease mice, which is pretty cool because we know that poor lymphatic system function is a marker of neurodegeneration. So basically, in conclusion, as exactly what we just said, undoubtedly physical exercise can modulate microglial activation in the central nervous system. Current status states that low intensity exercise is sufficient enough to induce this anti-microglial effect. So one thing before we completely step away from this point is that I want to emphasize that exercise actually induces inflammation initially. So generally, especially high intensity exercise can increase or cause inflammation because it is a lot of pounding on joints and muscles. It increases the sympathetic nervous system, and therefore inflammation can actually increase temporarily. But it is what's called a hormetic stress. Basically, it's a stressor that then causes the body to promote the opposite effect to improve the anti-inflammatory effects. And so some people may only be able to do low intensity exercise. That may be sufficient enough for them to improve their overall life and health. But high intensity exercise can do it more as long as it's not done overly too much, where it causes overtraining, it causes more stress, more damage to the body, and a lack of sleep on top of it without the ability to recover can also be worse. So basically what this study has shown is that, or this review article has shown, is that physical exercise should be in everybody's daily, weekly prescription when it comes to prevention of neurodegenerative diseases. And if you're trying to recover from any concussion, traumatic brain injury, you should also try to exercise daily, whether that be a really small amount, light aerobic exercise, or sometimes maybe more high intensity if your body can handle it with not that many symptoms. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I think this one's really interesting because it really gets down into the details of inflammation, neuroinflammation, and microglial activation. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. If you have any suggestions or future topics, I'd love to hear them. Thanks again, and have a great day. Stay healthy.